Sounds like you're super goal oriented, and it makes so much sense, right? You're not going to achieve $1 billion business without having a goal to get there, right? It doesn't just happen without the goal, right?
That's right. And I think a lot of people like the idea of doing something like creating $1 billion company, being a billionaire, creating a world changing app, but it's about the actions to get you there.
This show is all about helping you up-level your life, including your well-being, your relationships, your mental health, your wealth, your confidence, and your joy. I challenge you to keep an open mind as together we discover tips, tools, and advice from the experts to help you live life to your fullest potential. Welcome to the Jenna Banks Show. All right, Liz. Well, it is such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for being here to have this conversation about your wonderful new book. I'm really excited for this.
Thank you so much, Jenna. I'm so excited to be here.
Now, I want to let everyone know a little bit about you. So I'm going to read off your bio right now. So Liz Elting is the founder and CEO of the Elizabeth Elting Foundation. And she's an entrepreneur, business leader, linguophile. That's a new word for me. Philanthropist, feminist, and a mother. After living, studying, and working in 5 countries across the globe, Liz founded Trans Perfect out of an NYU dorm room in 1992 and served as co-CEO until 2018. Trans Perfect is the world's largest language solutions company with over $1.1 billion in revenue and offices in more than 100 cities worldwide. Liz has won countless awards, and I mean countless, including being recognized as a Now Women of Power and Influence, American Express, and Entrepreneur Magazine's Woman of the Year, and one of Forbes' richest self-made women every single year since the list's inception. And let me tell you, that list includes Oprah, Beyoncé, Rihanna, Mel Whitman, you name it. So it's an amazing list to be on, and we're very honored to have her here today. And now she is the author of the upcoming book, Dream Big and Win, translating passion into purpose and creating a $1 billion business. Wow, Liz. Wow.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction, Jenna. I am so honored to be here and thrilled to talk to you.
This is just such an accomplishment. I mean, you're one of such a very few amount of people in the world, much less in America, who've been able to accomplish such success. And now you've written a book. Why a book now? Because you're on one of America's richest list, or richest self-made women, and you've written a book. Like, you don't need the money, obviously. So why? Why the book?
Sure. So I wrote the book because I would have loved to have had this kind of book when I was in my 20s, sort of as a roadmap, mentor, just guide on how to succeed in business. And I couldn't find this type of thing. I found books that were how-to business books, very dry, no personal element. And this I wanted to make more like a beach read, a business book beach read business book. And I kind of open up. I'm pretty vulnerable, try to be accessible. And it's just my real story with lessons I learned along the way from what I did right and the many things I did wrong.
It is so very good. And you accomplished that. It really does feel like a beach read, like your best friend telling you a story of how they built this $1 billion business, and all the way even leading up to it. You know, you didn't start off with, a bunch of money handed to you from your parents, or, you didn't really have any kind of a head start like that. You did get your master's degree, right?
I did. And I was very fortunate that my parents paid for my undergrad degree and my MBA. So how lucky am I? Because I feel like if you have the education, that then you have unlimited possibilities. And certainly you can do a lot without the education too. But I had no excuse not to reach for the stars. So.
Yeah, you definitely had that head start with the opportunity. But as far as like funding, I don't want to jump ahead of myself, but I love how you mentioned in your book that that you didn't take on any debt. And I think that is such a big deal. I'm an entrepreneur myself, and I also sold a company. Wasn't nearly as successful as yours, but I also didn't take on any debt. And I mentioned that just to kind of share in that, that message that you were sending about the importance of not taking on too much or any debt. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. And I am such a fan of doing it that way. And in my life, I was never a fan of debt. That saying of Shakespeare's, neither a borrower nor a lender be. I kind of tried to stay away from borrowing money my whole life. It makes me uncomfortable. I don't like to be in debt. And certainly that was the case with the business. I also didn't want to spend the time drafting an extensive business plan and then going out and getting funding. Certainly a lot of entrepreneurs did that back then, and we know they're doing it now. And it's so difficult. It's so difficult to get that funding, number one, and it's also so time consuming.
Yeah.
And I felt my time would be so much better spent on sales, on getting revenues, sales, sales, sales. That was what it was all about. Because I knew, number one, it would take a lot of time to get that funding. Number two, if I did get that funding, then I'd still have to get the sales and the profit. So why not just put that effort into getting the revenue and the profit? And, I would say, we used to say revenue is vanity, profit is sanity. Now I would probably say getting funding is vanity and revenue and profit are sanity, because certainly you need the revenue to make the profit. And so that has to come first. But in the end, you need the profit to survive and to thrive.
Yeah, it's such an interesting point. And I'm sure that you were trained on how to raise money, given that you went and got your MBA. So you could have done it. You probably had all the skills to be able to go out and do that, but you opted not to. And I think that that's such a valuable lesson. You bootstrapped it, right? And I think that makes so much sense. Like, also, you talk about how as an entrepreneur, it's wise to solve a problem that already exists, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I would say don't confuse being an entrepreneur with being an inventor. You don't need to invent something entirely new to be wildly successful. It's more about finding a problem and coming up with a solution for it and then offering that solution to people.
What a great business plan, right? Find a problem and offer a solution, and then you might find it easier to get clients and thus be revenue positive, and then have profit to grow your business from that. And I think that makes so much more sense, and also probably alleviates a lot of burden. And then also going back to raising money, now you're accountable to somebody else, right? You're not really your own boss at that point, are you?
You are so right. Yes, that's another situation you want to avoid. It's complicated to have business partners. I had one and that was complicated enough. But yes, you don't want to have other people that you are indebted to, that you need to deliver to day in and day out, as far as making sure you're meeting their objectives, because often theirs might, in your mind, not make as much sense for the business as your own. They might be thinking about short-term profits as opposed to long-term.
Yeah.
And that was something that we could really focus on. What makes sense for the long term? We always were making money. We had to be, because we didn't have outside funding. But some of the decisions were based on what is right for our clients and employees in the longer term. And that's what we're going to focus on.
Yeah, and again, when you are focusing on making money and being profitable, you will focus on the client. That's where the money is, right? Is getting more business from the clients and growing your client base. So it makes so much business sense. So, okay, you mentioned that getting over the hurdle of the first million was like the hardest. That's like the hardest thing to do. Can you talk about that for a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. And I so believe the first $1 million in revenue is by far the hardest. So hard. And then after that, I say the first $5 million is the next hardest, because I really found once you get to 1 million, and certainly once you get to 5 million, it becomes so much easier to bring in the revenue. Because, of course, when you start, you have, and in our case, we had no relationships, we had no funding, we had no past jobs to speak about, we had no referrals. And so it's hard. Of course, it's hard. People would call, they'd say, how many people do you have at your company? How much revenue do you have? And we had none. So incredibly hard. So then I think it's about hours. It's about volume. It's about setting goals, It's about action, setting goals, action related goals, and making sure you deliver them moment in and moment out, day in and day out, week in and week out, month in and month out, and year in and year out. And hopefully you get to that million within a year, if you're lucky, or 2 years, or whatever it is. And then it becomes so much easier, because the last thing I'll say is it's hard to get that first project, or that first project from a given client. But once you do, if you deliver, if you spoil the client with service and quality and keep them coming back for more, they'll come back with multiple projects. And then the multiple projects will turn into a relationship. And that's why it's so much easier to grow after that first client and that
100.
project for a given client.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. Delivering just outstanding value to the client will just keep getting you that repeat business. I'm all about that. In fact, that's been always my business model, is just over deliver on value to the client and just keep your loyal client base, and then just keep growing from there. That's a really good plan for growth. Definitely.
Absolutely. Under promise and over deliver. Absolutely.
Definitely. Now, I love that you mentioned goals, because I wanted to get into that with you. Sounds like you're super goal oriented, and it makes so much sense, right? You're not going to achieve $1 billion business without having a goal to get there, right? It doesn't just happen without the goal, right?
That's right. And I think a lot of people like the idea of doing something like creating $1 billion company, being a billionaire, creating a world changing app, but it's about the actions to get you there. And basically what happens is you need to set goals, revenue goals, for example, and then what actions do you need to do every day to get you there, and then sticking to them, having discipline. Often that discipline is the difference between people who are enormously successful and people who are working on things and they talk about them, but they don't meet their goals. Simply discipline, not glamorous, not sexy, but that's what I think will get people there. And it's having the dream and then carrying out the actions to win.
So, did you learn about goal setting? Like, what if somebody watching or listening right now, they've just never been in the habit of setting goals? Is this something that you've always done, or did you learn it in school, or how do you go about it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting question. I just personally am very goal oriented because I find it very fulfilling to
Mhm.
think about what I want to do, whether it's create something or get better at something or just get a certain amount of exercise in every day.
Yeah.
And I know I'm not going to get there unless I have the goal. And I've found that if you set forth your goals and you write them down, and then if you share them with people, those are the
Mm.
ways to get there.
100%. I found that anytime I wrote something down, whether it's a vision board, putting it on a vision board, or writing it on a list, it happens. But you have to know what you're shooting for, right?
You have to, right? Because how can you get there if you don't know what you're shooting for?
Yeah.
And I think we're all so busy, especially in this day and age. There's so many distractions. We're all multitasking more than we ever have, with all the different screens and all the different forms of media and all the different activities. And it's about setting the goal and then not letting yourself get distracted, putting aside the hobbies, the screens, maybe the friends for a period of time, the family at certain moments. I hate to say that because my family is the most important thing in my life, but when I was starting my company, I couldn't have equal balance to do everything at once. And I think sure you can, but if you want to achieve a certain level of success, you've got to go all in and just throw yourself into it and focus. I say focus, focus. If you focus intensely, it's magic. It's like magic, but it's not magic. It's that focus. And
Hard work. It's hard work and focus. Yeah.
right. But it's important for people to remember that, because I think people think, but work-life balance, I need to be happy. And I agree. But if you can do something you're passionate about, if you can do it with people you like, you respect, they're like-minded, and you all work hard with that similar goal, and then you celebrate at the end of the day, then it becomes very rewarding.
I think that's key. Got to celebrate at the end of the day. You have to make sure you are relishing what you're accomplishing along the way, or you're just always too goal oriented, too focused on the future and not really enjoying today. And I think that does help bring that work-life balance when you do that.
Absolutely. And I think that's what I tried to do in my business. basically had the goals, but then when we got those results, we celebrated, and we celebrated together by going out at night, many parties, many awards, so much positive reinforcement, and that made it fun for everybody.
All right, so I want to talk to you about that. I love that you mentioned you mentioned so much about how you got there, including your processes and how you compensated your salespeople and how it was important to make them basically mini entrepreneurs for you by building their comp plan so that they were basically running their own mini business. And yes, I so believe in that. I think it's so important to give people ownership over their roles in a company and incentivize them like an entrepreneur. So can you speak to that for a minute?
Oh, absolutely. And that was really a case of looking for people who were very entrepreneurial. When I hired people, I was looking for a person who, if they weren't working for us, they might be creating their own company. If they had an idea, a problem to solve, but I could tell. And they would say things in the interview, and I would ask questions. I mean, one of the questions that I had, which I always thought was an interesting question, was my ice cream store question. So I would always say, so, through the years you've worked, have you ever had a job working like in an ice cream store or behind a counter, something like that, with a cash register where you were serving people? And sometimes people would say, oh, yes, I did. I worked in this kind of store or this kind of restaurant or whatever. And I said, great, wonderful, love it. And I loved it for a couple of reasons. One is I love people who have that kind of work experience. I mean, serving people, getting, kind of into the whatever public facing jobs. I think those are wonderful. But the other reason is then I could ask my question, which was, if you were dealing with a cash register, did you, as a employee or a manager, did you ever see another employee stealing money out of the cash register? And if you did, what would you do? Or what did you do if you had this job? Or what would you do if you didn't have this job? And I was looking for a certain kind of answer. And some of them would say things like, oh, well, I would tell them to put it back, or I would talk to them about what problems they were having. And I know that sounds very nice. It sounds very nice, but that was not what I wanted. I wanted someone who said, I would tell them to put it back, but then I would go to my manager and tell them, or go to the owner and tell them. And if I had the authority, I would terminate them. Because two things. One is integrity. Integrity is the most important. You need to work with honest people you can trust. And the second part of it is that ownership mentality. And that was two of the core values that were part of, what I felt we needed to have for our company, were integrity and owning it, and treating the company like you own it, meaning the company's money, the client, the project, all of it. So that's what they needed to do at that ice cream store, and that's what they needed to do at our company. So back to your question about the entrepreneurship piece. Okay, people who were excited to work at the company, they were enthusiastic about building the world's largest language solutions company, because that's what I would tell them was the goal.
That was the goal, right? Yeah.
And people need to know what they're shooting for.
Yeah.
Then say, okay, so you can start in New York, or you can go and open our Washington, D.C. office, or our Chicago office, or our San Diego office. And we will start you just as one person, just you. But then if you sell, for example, $50,000 a month for 3 consecutive months, you can hire a second person. And then if the two of you sell $120,000 for 3 consecutive months, we can hire a third person, and so on. So they realized, okay, they may be starting on their own, and it'll be tough. They're going to have to send out a lot of letters and make a lot of phone calls. But then when they get that business, they will get rewarded. And their goal may have been to develop a 100-person office, to create a 100-person office. And often they did. So we were able to afford to pay for it because they were delivering the results. And then the other piece of it is the way we compensated them. Yeah. We paid them so that they were making more money than they would at a competitor, or really in another sales position in any industry, because they may have gotten a relatively low draw, but they had a very high commission. And I did not want that. And I did not set it up for that commission to sunset, meaning to go down. So on that first project, they made whatever percent, they made 10%, let's say. And then 5 years later, for that same client, they still made 10%. And 10 years later, for that same client, they still made 10%. But at this point, they probably had 1,000 clients rather than
Wow.
2 or 5. So that's how they made this money. And of course, the company benefited from that too. So paying them like entrepreneurs, paying them like owners was critical as well.
So smart. So smart. It sounds like you celebrated your employees often as well, going out and having the parties and the celebrations. I think it's really important too, right? Giving them that recognition.
Absolutely. I think positive recognition is so, so important. I am such a believer in positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
Things like, for example, certainly paying people so that they are incentivized to increase revenue and profit. And when they do, they really get a piece of the pie the same way the company
Yeah.
does. I think that's critical. Also, um, bonuses when appropriate, which happen a lot. Also, a wheel spin where we would spin a wheel monthly. And for people who did the types of things we were looking for, best quality, highest turnaround time, uh, whatever, they would get a spin of the wheel and we'd have fun prizes. Yeah, things like a trip for two to the Bahamas, a spa day, an iPad. Okay, so there's that and Platinum Club, which was for our top salespeople, and then awards, and so many awards. We
Mm.
had many, many celebrations, summer parties, holiday parties, uh, both in New York, where our headquarters was, and around the world. Uh, and lots of different ways to celebrate people on a continuous basis for results. And it was wonderful. It was a very exciting place to be. It was a lot of hard work, but then we really celebrated the results. And I think that's so important.
Yeah, hard work, but it sounds like it was fun. And then also just helping empower others is you also find that I find that fulfilling. I'm sure you did too, right? To see people hit those massive milestones and make that kind of money. It's fun to celebrate other people's success, no?
Oh my gosh, I think that was the most interesting thing to me about the whole experience. When I first started the company, I had worked in the industry for 3 years at another translation company between
Mhm.
college and grad school, and I thought, "I love this industry, but I think it can be done better."
Yeah.
And so I thought, "Okay." When I had a brief stint in finance with a lot of
Mhm.
drama and not a culture I liked and not an industry I liked, and I thought, "Now's the moment. I'm going to start this company." At the time, I should mention, there were 10,000 other translation companies out
That
there.
is amazing. Yeah, you mentioned that in your book. It's like, how do you
No,
build a $1 billion company in an industry that has 10,000 other companies in
but
it?
the
That's
reason
crazy.
and the reason I think that's so important to point out is that really relates to the point you do not have to invent something entirely new to be wildly successful. You just have to do it differently and better, and there's so
Mhm.
many different ways to do that. And I thought to myself, if I'm going to start this company, I wanna make it the biggest, I wanna make it the best, and that's the goal. But then related to what we were just talking about, what I learned along the way is it's great, the revenues are going up, we're opening more offices, we're providing more services, but the best part was meeting these people and hiring these people, and
Mhm.
often right out of school, they were these smart, ambitious overachievers who just wanted a chance, and then they were going to deliver, and they did deliver, and watching them start entry level and then growing with the company and managing 50 people or 100 people, and in a number of cases becoming millionaires. I mean, but that was so exciting and rewarding because then it becomes much more about them and sharing what I'm learning and learning from them. I mean, there were so many reasons that became the most rewarding part of
I'm
all.
glad that you mentioned that some of them became millionaires because I find that it's so important to have your people be able to reach that level of success because it gives everybody else something to aspire to, right? You can't lower their comp plan. I see this happen all the time. This message needs to reach companies of all sizes, honestly, because I see them go in and go, "Oh, my people are too successful right now." And then they go in and they do this massive comp plan change and demotivate the entire sales team. Why would you do that? They need to see that they can reach these levels of success.
Oh, I could not agree more. And yes, I've heard of that happening in sales teams, and it was the opposite, certainly in the situation that we created. And I even looked for a way and I was able to find a way. We were able to find a way where we compensated our production people, which is as well, which is
Mm.
the biggest part of the company, on revenue and profit, and made it so as they did well, they could make a lot more than they would make at other companies in our industry and probably in any industry.
Amazing. I love that you shared that. Thank you so much. So, there's so many different aspects to running a business, and you really have to be running on all cylinders. You have to get it all right. You could do great and bring in all these sales, but not be good and managing the finances in the background. Or, you could be great at delivering a wonderful product, but not nail the sales, right? So, like, you need to keep it all running. And I think you mentioned, what are some of the other aspects that you think are vital like that? And you talk about investing, some other areas. What do you think are some of those other key components, like, that you have to have them all running simultaneously super well?
Well, you do. And I think what's interesting about that point, by the way, is none of us is good at all of them, or, we all have our strengths and
Mhm.
our weaknesses. So, in the beginning, certainly, and when your company is small, you have to be willing to
Got
do everything.
all of it, right?
Wear all
Yeah.
the hats, wear all the hats, and you need to
Yeah.
hire people who are willing to wear all hats.
Yeah.
Uh, as you grow, you definitely need to find people with skills who complement yours, and you want to do that as quickly as possible. People who are good at, I mean, in my case, at the many things I'm not good at, which wasn't hard because I mean, there are people who are great tech people. I'm not. Okay, I know I need those. But so hiring people whose skills complement yours, who are smarter than you, I think that's super critical. One important point related to what you're asking and this topic is this: so many people are great entrepreneurs and they have a lot of the skills. Maybe they have most of the skills, and they think, okay, I want to be an entrepreneur and I want to grow my company. The problem is they are the only salesperson. They may have a great
Mm.
product, a great service, a great back end, a great infrastructure, but they are the salesperson. And the way to grow the company big, to really scale it, is to create a world class sales organization where you have however many. I mean, in our case, it was over 600 full time salespeople. But
Wow.
right, but we need that was the only way we were going to be able to scale it. And I think that's what a lot of people do last when they're an entrepreneur,
Mm.
because they're dealing with so many things. And I think that was what we were able to do. And that makes a huge difference because that's how you will get those revenues and those profits so you can keep growing.
That's just incredible. And I love that you have shared with us your process. I mean, you really go into such incredible detail, and it's just such a gift for the price of a book. Somebody gets really to understand how you built this billion-dollar company. And it's just such a beautiful gift. You didn't have to do this. And you're sharing in this really beautiful, heartfelt, warm, kind of like a best friend kind of way. Honestly, it feels like you're, just talking with a best friend, and you're just trying to share your wisdom and what you've learned all the way from college, all the way. I love how you take us to the dorm room all the way through to the very end, and everything in between. So yeah, that's just amazing. And I see you want to say something. I see it right on the tip of your
Oh,
lips.
no, no, no. I'm loving hearing what you have to say, but absolutely. And I think as far as women, because yes, we could touch on that a bit. The reason I started the company, well, I didn't talk about that, but I had an experience being a woman at the proprietary trading division of a French bank where I walked in, I realized I was the only woman, and I thought, okay, I can deal with this. I like men. I love men. I was actually quite boy crazy over the years, but whenever the phone rang, it was Liz, phone, because I was the woman. And so that was a problem. And then the problem went on. The environment, it was very much a bro culture, a boys' club. And this was in finance in the 90s, but this still could be the case in some places. And
Yeah.
maybe it's not always that, but maybe it's that the systems aren't quite set up for women with family leave, for example, for when people are, ready to have kids. They may not have what they need. And that still is an issue to this day. And as we've heard, or equal pay, that still can be an issue. So I decided I was going to leave that company. And if I didn't like that sandbox, I was going to go create my own sandbox, so to speak. And I tried to create the best culture I could for everybody. I saw a lot of things happen over the years. in business. And ultimately, I decided to sell after 26 years. But I had a wonderful journey with that company, and now I have a foundation where I focus on helping support and empower women and marginalized populations. But the reason I'm saying all this is for women. I started it because I had an experience as a woman, and I think a lot of us women do. And if we can't change things so easily in the business world, let's go create our own, create the ideal culture. And that's so valuable. First of all, it'll make us happy. It'll make all the people we hire happy. And I believe economic power is social power, and social power is political power. And that's really how we change the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm so glad you mentioned that, which leads us to your philanthropy now. So that's what you do full time, is now you're promoting your book. So that's going to take up a lot of time and speaking and all.
It's like launching a business. But yes, the answer is yes. I sold my company 5 years ago, so in 2018, and now I have a foundation. And as I was saying, during the years, I saw a lot of issues for women. Being a woman, I experienced some, and then the women at my company, I saw what some of them had gone through, and then just women out there and what they were dealing with, and marginalized populations, diverse populations, and what they needed to deal with. So as a result, now I have a foundation, and we support women and marginalized populations and diverse communities, and it's so exciting and so fulfilling, and we just want to make the world a better place, and really we want equality for all.
What a great way to give back. And so I was going to ask you, you've retired at such a young age, and, and now you're doing the philanthropy, which of course, I'm sure your days are still very, very busy. And you did, by the way, I wanted to back up for a second. You did all this while being a mother. I wanted to point that out. Like, you built $1 billion business as a mother. Was that tough? Like, yeah, like, so, because I know you put a lot of focus into the business. And did you feel any like mom guilt? And I say this because, I went through that too. So yeah.
Oh, you did too. Oh, and I talk about it in chapter 7, all about it. Oh boy, what I went through, and maybe you did too, Jenna. But boy, I have a quote in the book by Arianna Huffington, and it's so true. And I just want to get it right. It's something like, when you're a working mom, it's like guilt on steroids, right? You always feel it's so hard. You feel guilty when you're working because you're not with your kids, and you feel guilty when you're with your kids because you're supposed to be paying attention to your other child. And it's a constant struggle, and it's challenging. And I figured, well, part of it is my kids got older, and that makes it a bit easier, but also I really learned a lot about what I did wrong, not having a backup plan, not having a succession plan for myself. Our company wasn't set up for that initially when I had my kids. So that's so important. I talk about that in the book. People,
what do you mean succession plan? What is
what I
that?
mean by that is, first of all, I learned over the years as an entrepreneur, we should have a succession plan for every single employee in the company, from the most junior to the CEO. What happens if they decide to leave, if they get hit by a bus. So that is so critical, because even as companies grow, they don't always do that right. And we had issues with that. But when I had my first child, we had 150 people. So we had employees, but I still had no one to back me up. And I realized that was not ideal. That was not proper planning. That is something that should have been different. We also didn't have the right family plan in place for anyone. So now at this point, companies have better family plans, maternity leave or paternity leave. They also, you need to have a backup, whether you're the owner or whatever position you're in. I think that's super important. And then the other piece of it that I learned is, you need to compartmentalize. You need to make it so you go in it. I mean, it used to be go into work at a certain time. I mean, now it might be working from home, but you start at a certain time, and then you finish at the time, 9 to 6, whatever your hours are, and then you turn it off, and you get in family mode, and you really focus on your family. And that's so important for a few reasons. One is your own mental health and happiness. Secondly, you have people working for you. They don't want to see you as their manager or the boss, the CEO of the company, working 24/7, or they'll think, wow, I never want my boss's job. I don't want to be at this company. So it's important for that. And the way to do all this, make it about results, not hours. Make it about results. Make very clear what the goals are, and
Mm.
then just monitor that they're being done. And if people are making their goals that were set forth from them, that they agreed to, that you agreed to, then you're not watching their hours. And that
Liz, I am so glad you brought this up because this is so important for any company. I don't care if you're running your own company or you've got, a multinational global business. Results is the way to go,
yes.
right? Yeah.
And so many, and I think it relates to at your company and in life, right? I mean, people talk about, oh, I'm working these hours and they're sort of in, they're sort of out, but make it about results. Be intense while you're there, and then go away and do
Yeah.
something else. But yes, all about results. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it.
There's a lot of data around this. We actually waste so much time just sitting there trying to burn it out. You can't burn it out 10 hours, 12 hours a day. You can't. Chances are about 6 of it is wasted time. So
That's
if
right.
you can really be results oriented and go in and kill it, hit your goals, hit your numbers, hit your KPIs and leave, even if you've only worked 4 hours that day, it should not matter.
Right. It's about the results. And that's why I believe, as an employee, as a manager, as an owner, just coming up with exactly what those results are that have to be met. The goals slash results. And then if they're met, life is good and everybody should be happy. Couldn't
Wow.
agree.
What a brilliant piece of wisdom. Thank you for sharing that. If I talked to you for 5 hours, I bet you we would just be like like we would basically be able to go out and build our billion-dollar business. But honestly, you have just shared so many of these types of wonderful nuggets in your book. And I mean, unfortunately, we don't have 5 hours. So you're going to have to go pick up a copy of her book. Now, by the time you watch this, the book might already be out. But if you're getting a chance to see it before the end of September 2023, go and pre-order it on Amazon and wherever else books are sold. It's out there already for pre-order, so definitely get that in. And go to Liz's website because you give some extra stuff as well, right?
Yes, yes, there are perks for pre-ordering, and I would love that. And as I said, I try to make it like vulnerable, approachable, authentic, really opening up and entertaining too, because we need that when we're reading about business. We got to keep it interesting. So,
Yeah.
so thank you, Jenna. Thank you so much.